Lane Kiffin is now 0-3 after Ole Miss lost to Alabama this past Saturday 24-10. And he also is now 0-4 against top 10 teams since he's been the head coach of Ole Miss football. Now, Ole Miss, right? This is a program that people don't expect them every single season to win the SEC West or even compete for the SEC, but you do expect them to have 9, 10 wins every 2 to 3 years, and they're expected to probably be around the 8-win team on a consistent basis. But for some reason, though, you wonder why they can't be more than that. Why can't Lane Kiffin put Ole Miss in a position where they actually are good enough to compete for the SEC? I don't really think it has anything to do with the fact that he can't bring in the kind of recruits that Alabama, LSU, and Georgia can. He does do a pretty good job at utilizing the transfer portal, and I do think that he recruits at a good enough level that Ole Miss is capable of being able that, maybe 1 or 2 years here and there, they're able to compete for the SEC because he is one of the best offensive minds in college football. It's just, as a head coach, I think there's a ceiling that your program kind of reaches with Lane Kiffin. And ever since that 10-win season that they had in 2021, I haven't really seen the same juice with this program since. And 2022 last year, they started out 7-0, and then after that 7-0 start, they went 1-5 to end the season. And with that loss to Alabama, it's really disappointing if you're a Rebels fan because there was a good amount of people out there that believe that Ole Miss could have won that game. And it's not like this is a stacked or great Alabama team. When you look at Alabama from a roster standpoint and you see all the 5 and 4 stars, you may think that this is the best team in college football. They have the highest blue chip ratio in all of America. 90% of their roster is made up of 5 or 4 stars. But this season, Alabama hasn't really played up to that level. They haven't played like the most talented team in America. They nearly lost the USF. So if you're an Ole Miss fan and you're Lane Kiffin, you would think that you would have had a great chance of being able to beat Alabama. And even after the game, like Lane Kiffin, he felt like, we thought we had a great chance to win this game. Well, you didn't get it done because your offense stunk in this game. Alabama's defense pretty much clamped your offense for the whole entire game, pretty much outside of your first couple of drives. Jackson Dart didn't look good. Your defense, I didn't really think had the greatest performance. I mean, you got to ask yourself, is Lane Kiffin overrated? Now, I posted a poll asking you guys this in the community section, and 85% of you guys said yes. And when I look at Lane Kiffin, I like him. I don't have anything against him. I like his personality. He's one of the funniest coaches to keep up with and listen to the press conferences. But when it comes to being able to have a team ready to play against some of the best teams in the SEC, Ole Miss always comes up small. Ole Miss, last season, where was any of their big wins at? Where are any of the signature wins that Lane Kiffin can say that he has on his resume as the head coach of Ole Miss? I mean, you couldn't even beat one of Nick Saban's worst Bama teams. And even though they were playing on home, I mean, it's not like Alabama's offense was lighting the world on fire. I mean, that was a winnable game for Ole Miss. You see, when you have an offensive-minded head coach and you're going up against a team that has questionable offense but a great defense, you should be able to win those games because you see, if you can get the 30 points, it's going to be a struggle for Alabama to win because their offense, regardless of how good their defense is, isn't the kind of offense that can consistently put up 30 on you. So if you're an Ole Miss fan, you had every right to believe that you should have won this game and that you could have won this game despite the talent discrepancy. I mean, Alabama isn't really executing all that great offensively, so therefore, with the weapons that Ole Miss has at receiver and how good their offensive line is, this was probably the best year and the best chance that Lane Kiffin had at being able to get a win over his former employer. And if you can't beat Alabama, how are you going to be able to beat LSU? You lost to Arkansas last year. Are you going to be able to beat Auburn? I mean, it's one thing to win the Egg Bowl. That's cool. The Egg Bowl is your big rivalry game. But what about the other big-time matchups that you have to face off against? their next 4 games are against LSU, Arkansas. Then after their bye week, they got Auburn on the road, then Texas A&M, then Georgia. Do you guys see Ole Miss winning any of those upcoming matchups? I don't think they're going to beat LSU or Arkansas. I think they got a chance to win those games. The Arkansas game could go either way because Lane Kiffin and Sam Pittman are kind of in similar positions right now in terms of where the season is starting to head. But can you beat Auburn on the road, Texas A&M, Georgia? Like, we got to start seeing Ole Miss pull off some big wins under Lane Kiffin. You know, like, we all like Lane Kiffin. At least most of us like Lane Kiffin. But when are we going to start seeing the results? You know, Lane Kiffin is supposed to be this offensive guru. But yet, this offense, their best season, they won 10 games when they had Matt Corral. And ever since then, they haven't had that same amount of success. I mean, even Dan Mullen at Florida was able to get Florida to the SEC championship, and they had a competitive game against Alabama. When are we going to see Ole Miss put up a competitive fight against Alabama? You know, like, it's like every time they play Alabama, you know they're about to get their ass beat. It was never like this when they had Hugh Freeze. Anytime you had Hugh Freeze, there was not a single team that you didn't have a chance at beating. You know, like, I think Lane Kiffin gets a little bit too much praise for how good he is on the offense side of football, and he doesn't get held accountable for his overall performance as a head coach in the SEC. You see, anywhere else that Lane Kiffin could coach at, this would be a solid resume. You know, he's been to a New Year's Six bowl game. He does have a pretty good win-loss record at Ole Miss, but Ole Miss is stuck with Lane Kiffin being the head coach. Like, Hugh Freeze at Auburn potentially is good enough that Auburn could be in the SEC championship consistently in the next couple of years, depending on how well he's able to recruit and navigate the transfer portal. Look at Brian Kelly, Nick Saban. Like, some of the best coaches in college football are all in the SEC. And what's going to happen when Oklahoma and Texas start conference play in this conference next year? How far is Ole Miss going to fall? Because they already are one of the middle teams in the SEC. I won't say they're in the top echelon, but they're in that category that you can expect them to be an 8-win, 7-win program consistently. But when Texas and Oklahoma enter the fold, is this still going to be a team that you can look at and say, yeah, they got Lane Kiffin, you can trust them to win 7, 8 games? When the Sooners and the Longhorns come, Ole Miss, they may end up being a 5-6 win team, because if you're 0-4 against top 10 teams, how are you going to play against some of the best teams in college football that happen to be in this conference? You know, that's my problem with Lane Kiffin. Anytime they go up against some of the best teams in this conference or in all of college football, they struggle. And Ole Miss just seems to be a program that does have the potential to compete for an SEC title every once in a while. I'm not saying that Lane Kiffin needs to have the Rebels competing for the SEC every single season. I'm realistic. I understand college football revolves around recruiting, and Ole Miss, just based on where they are from a location standpoint, they're not going to be able to bring in the kind of recruit consistently that Alabama and Georgia do. I'm not expecting them to be able to bring in top 5, top 10 recruiting classes. That's not what I'm saying. What I am saying is that, you know, for Ole Miss, having the resources that Lane Kiffin has, you know, you would think that this would be a program that, you know, every 3 to 4 years, they should be able to compete for a title in this conference, such as Auburn, when Gus Malzahn was the head coach there. You see, the thing with Gus Malzahn was that he wasn't that consistent, but you knew that every 3 years, Auburn was going to be up there competing for an SEC title. Why can't Ole Miss be in that same predicament? Why can't they put themselves in that same conversation where, you know, we may not be a consistent contender within this conference, but every 3 to 4 years, we're capable of being able to pull off a 10, 11 win season, and we can make it to Atlanta. You know, Lane Kiffin, for somebody that gets so much praise and so much admiration amongst the head coaching world, I don't really see the results. You know, he's a solid head coach, but I don't think he's a good head coach. And you just wonder, you know, with how tough their schedule is about to get, if their season is about to go left, and if we really are about to start looking at Lane Kiffin in a whole entirely different light. I mean, I love Lane Kiffin. He's one of my favorite coaches in college football, but damn, 0-3 against Bama, 0-4 against top 10 teams. When is Ole Miss going to get their signature win? When are they going to get a win that really can put them on the map? A win that Rebels fans can really look at and say, oh, yeah, like, this is the biggest win of the Lane Kiffin era. Like, they've yet to have a win like that. You can't beat one of the worst Bama teams that Nick Saban has ever had. And what are you going to do against LSU and Arkansas in the next couple of weeks? Are you going to be able to beat Auburn? We are about to find out a lot about Lane Kiffin and this Ole Miss program within the next month. Because, I mean, this season, they're 2-1 right now. It hasn't gotten off the rails, but you look at how last season went, and you look at how this season possibly could go. I mean, they could start 2-0 and then lose their next 4 games and easily be 2-4. You know, I think Lane Kiffin is, I'm not going to say he's the most overrated head coach in college football, because I definitely think there are way more overrated coaches such as Ryan Day and, you know, Lincoln Riley per se. But when I look at Lane Kiffin, I definitely think that this is somebody who definitely could be doing a lot better than what he's doing right now, Ole Miss. And I know I'm not a coach, and I don't really know everything that goes into being a great coach in college football, but Lane Kiffin gets so much praise and so much admiration for somebody that's 0-3 against Bama and 0-4 against top 10 teams. You're in the best conference in college football. You got to be able to beat some of the best teams in college football, and I just don't think Ole Miss is capable of doing that under Lane Kiffin, and that's why I think he's just a little bit overrated.